Thank you, Mr. Terrazzano. I think you've raised some really important points, that it's the people on fixed incomes that are getting hit the worst. You pointed out, and it is important to note that the government did spend $100 billion even before COVID. During COVID, there was close to $500 billion spent, where almost a $250 billion, it wasn't even, had nothing to do with COVID at all. And like you said, there's going to be the tripling of the carbon tax that's going to be coming up. Now, there's also the point that over the last 7 years, many good energy projects were cancelled by the Liberal government, and now we see a 50 to 100% increase in home heating costs because of that. Do you think it's the right time to be increasing the carbon tax, or even have a carbon tax, when all we see is emissions going up?
I think it's the worst possible time. I think it should have been a no-brainer. At the very least, the government not raise taxes when so many people lost their job, when so many small businesses were worried that their savings wouldn't keep the lights on. Right now we have people who are trying to drive from Port Hope to Richmond Hill for work who can't afford to fuel up their cars. And right around the corner is going to be winter time, and of course the carbon tax drives up the cost to heat our homes during those cold winter months. But look, I don't think we should kid ourselves. The government knows that these tax increases are inflationary, and that's the whole goal of the carbon tax. Sometimes I think that the government pats itself on the back every time it sees the big prices at the pumps. Same with the second carbon tax. The government's analysis is very clear. The second carbon tax could add up to an extra 13 cents per litre to the price of gasoline by 2030, and of course, there are no rebates with the second carbon tax.
I agree with you. When a province like mine, Alberta, there's more Albertans that have to pay out of their pocket than what they get back from the rebate. And once the carbon tax triples, a Canadian family will pay up to $2,300 out of their pocket in carbon tax. And again, we don't see emissions coming down either. And we're seeing the money coming out of Albertans' pockets. Now, going to today's tax rate increases by the Bank of Canada, what do you think this is a reaction to?
Out-of-control spending for years. I mean, out-of-control spending drives up the cost of living. So I think that's exactly what the reaction is to. But let me just get back to Alberta, because we've heard the government time and again mislead Canadians by claiming that households get more money back with their rebate. But of course, the Parliamentary Budget Officer has shown that that is magic math. My family lives in Alberta too, and there's no wonder that Albertans just voted in the equalization referendum to stop being treated like the cash cow of Confederation. Well, this year alone, the carbon tax will cost the average household in Alberta $671, even after the rebates, according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer.
Now, time and time again, we do hear the Liberal government say this is not our problem. Inflation is by some act of God. It's a world problem. But recently, we've heard the former Bank of Canada governor, and a possible Liberal leadership candidate, Mark Carney, come out and say this is a domestic issue. And the current Bank of Canada governor has said this is a homegrown issue. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I certainly agree that the government created the perfect storm for inflation, which is too many dollars chasing too few goods. We've seen tax increases here in Canada while other countries are reducing taxes. 51 other national governments have cut taxes to ease the burden of inflation or during the pandemic, including many of our peers. More than half of G7 and G20 countries cut taxes. 2/3 of OECD cut taxes. And while our government has been increasing gas taxes, Australia cut its gas tax in half. The Netherlands provided significant gas tax relief. South Korea cut its gas tax by 30%. India cut gas taxes to, quote, keep inflation low, thus helping the poor and middle classes.